Okay. One of the things I always say at the beginning of each show is when that little red live button's up there, it makes it for reals. It's like, here we are. It's really happening. And you don't get any redos. It's not like you get to pre-record a show and then edit. The magic of television and editing. And I'm sure we'll probably spend some time that being somewhat of your background, Kyle. So on the cusp, episode 10 with Kyle McDougall. So again, always to share with the audience the premise and the concept of On the Cusp and why it's branded that way. We're always on the cusp of that best version of ourselves. We grew up as young men and women with these great ideas of who we're going to be and what that's going to look like, that perfect dream. And then life happens. We get thrown different things, and a lot of times they're curveballs, and sometimes they totally sidetrack our dreams and aspirations. But there's no shelf life to being able to revisit goals and dreams and aspirations. So on the cusp is always about stretching a little bit further, keeping yourself accountable, and chasing those dreams and looking to be that best version of yourself. So that being said, this is episode 10, and one of the things I realized today when I was scratching out some notes, Kyle, is one, everybody that's come through this show so far, I have had some form of connection with, past with, or some sort of collaboration with. And the other thing that I also realized that was like a gong going off in my head was they're all talented people. You're all talented people. And that for me was super cool because I think that's why when I made a list of people that I really desired and aspired to be able to do a show with, and you being on that list, was because there was that aspect of talent and other things as far as character and just good attitude, positive attitude. So how do I know Kyle McDougall? So we go way back to high school, Sir Wilfrid Laurier. So I came from Edmonton, Alberta, Air Force brat. My first year at Sir Will was grade 10. So I was used to moving every 4 years. So it wasn't foreign to me to have to kind of hit the reset button, start all over again, and try to make some friends. And having always been, involved in sports and whatnot, it didn't take too long for chatting with Kyle and other people. And I remember Patrick Corbett and, Erica Larson and, Denise and whatnot. And hey, why don't you come out and do some cross country running? and then I was like, yeah, okay, right on. Thanks for the invite. Super cool. Came out and would do the practices and whatnot. And then that's when I realized that I felt like I was living under a rock because all you guys had these cool spandex, these long spandex on. And I had some crazy board shorts that I'm like, okay, I'm not part of the crowd here. So it didn't take long for that to mean a lot into my introduction to Sir Will. And then you guys were like, hey, we transitioned into dryland training for cross-country skiing. Like cross-country skiing, I said, okay, I think I've seen that on TV, like in the Olympics and, the biathlon. I go, I'm a hockey player. How hard could it be? And I remember you guys kind of just going, okay, Steph. So the dryland training was super cool. Obviously, Mrs. Edwards.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting you being on the show and us sharing some time together a week from seeing each other in person for our Sir Will high school reunion. And looking in the forum over the last couple of weeks, you do forget a lot. And when you see posts of, guest to student and pictures of stuff that's happened, you're like, oh my goodness, yeah, those were things that were in our lives as young men and women. And so I get out there on the track in the back of the school. There was finally some snow, and I get given some skis. Well, let me tell you, I had a few pretty good descriptives that were coming in under my breath. And I was watching you guys all just skate away, looking beautiful in your tights. And I'm like, I'm fucking done. I'm like, I am not doing this. But you guys encouraged me. You guys kind of kept me accountable. You guys, hey, Steph, no problem. Just take some time, practice, whatever. And I remember when we were doing our dryland training, Mondays were like a 15K run. And we had to do that Blair Hill. Remember that hill?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So.
down, up kind of thing. And then, Mrs. Edwards was just unbeatable. She wouldn't let anybody come in first before her.
This is a weird thing. If you thought you were going to run ahead, all of a sudden she's saying, no, keep going back and forth until everybody else shows up. It's like, son of a gun.
Oh,
You thought you were doing great. That's the last time you ever jumped out on the lead that far. You're just like, pace ourselves. That was
Yeah,
great.
and I'm glad you bring that up because I made a comment in the forum about Mrs. Edwards. She was really a backbone in fueling my desire and my ambition to be the best athlete I could be because she really pushed us. She really raised the bar, and God love her for that. That's that whole, never quit, right? Never give up, which is the tagline for On the Cusp is never give up. And she led by example, Kyle.
Yeah,
She led by example.
her and her
Uh,
husband, we when
yes.
we were in grade 9, Gloucester High School and Sir Will trained together. So her husband was coaching over at Gloucester, and so we used to go out together. And for us, I knew him. He had a challenge. I think he had a blood
He has,
clot. It
he had a
was
stroke.
stroke, and so, but I knew him before he had the stroke, and so I borrowed his poles, her shoes, somebody else's skis. I didn't have much money, and so I was this ragtag. I had a bit of everybody else's. I remember we used to laugh. We were coming up to a hill, and he'd always yell at me, keep your poles up." He goes, "You drop those poles if you fall." It's like, "Oh my, sorry." But that was the kind of thing, like, when you didn't have a whole lot of money,
Yeah.
and, there's 5 kids in our family, but that was a big deal, so we trained together, the groups went out together. I think that at the tail end, unfortunately for myself, I kinda got into a relationship, I think, in grade 11, I think that pulled me out of cross country running and skiing, so
Yes. Yes.
and,
I recall.
and I think that at that time, I think, but it changed everything. I got more into rugby at the time, but that was the transition.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you also bring that up because this is what the show is about. What we talked about at the beginning is as young men and women, we're starting out new things in our lives, those first relationships, and then all of a sudden, we get committed to that and then not to our friends and our groups and our activities and vocations and whatnot. And that's just a very, very natural process, of life. But yeah, it's. I remember Mrs. Edwards' husband. I remember being in the hallway when I'd see him walking around with his cane post stroke and whatnot. And but two people that just nothing would stop them, right? It's like you pick yourself up and you keep going. So this is how. I mean, I know Kyle can go on and on and on. And the other thing too that kind of will dovetail into some of our conversation on the show is talking about talented people. I observe people, and I still do to this day. I'm fascinated with the human condition in people. Why we do or we don't do certain things. And I would be. I remember. I don't remember which class it was in, but I was sitting pretty close to you, and you were like one row over, but kind of one forward. It was like a perfect bird's eye view of you taking your notes, but not really your notes. It, and you were drawing some just absolutely epic pictures, and I was just fascinated. And being a person who still can only do stickmen, I just can't do it. I've always thought what a gift that is, and you're just so talented, Kyle, and I know that was part of probably your path and your different careers and whatnot. So I would like to talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So to give a little bit of framework here, and then I kind of turn it over to Kyle, is we always ask our guests, like, what are your 3, 4 things that you're really passionate about, that you have a lot of experience about, that you'd like to kind of share kind of openly. And Kyle threw that over the fence to me. And so one of the first themes, and they were all landed well for me because I'm like all passionate about these, is building a business and its culture. So when you wrote that, there's 2 things there about building a business. Here, sorry, we also have the ability to comments or questions. So here we go. We have Lisa Ingram Anderson saying, great to see you guys. Thank you. Yes, very excited for next week. But it's culture. It's culture. So it's all yours here, sir.
Well, it's an interesting thing. Like, I kind of fell back into my career. I was one of the few people that knew I was at Sir Will at grade 9, but I left in grade 10. And when I left in grade 10, I went to Cold Lake, Alberta. And at that point, it's so funny because this is timely. I saw Top Gun, and at the same time, I was working. My dad was on the base, and so I got access to almost everything. I got access to working in and around the jets. I got to do work on the simulator. I fell in love with it. I thought that's where I was going to go. I thought I was going to go to RMC, and so I was kind of focused on that. And then I found out, my senior year, that my eyes weren't perfect, and you can't fly jets. Your eyes can deteriorate after the fact, but not going in. And so that changed my whole trajectory. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do for the next 2 to 3 years? I was like, crap. Um, so honestly, I kind of felt a little rudderless at that point. But I love to work. That's the thing that I say about everything. People are people always hear growing up, find your passion. I just say, just be passionate about everything you do, and it's the better way to go about it. That way, you enjoy and you go after each job that you sort of embark upon. So I mean, I loved being a dishwasher when I was in high school. It's going to sound crazy, but I want to be the best dishwasher around. It got to be a chance that Pat and I were like training people um, at the Hudson Bay Company restaurants, But I loved it. My dad used to always say to us, somebody's always watching, and so do your best because someone's going to pick up, someone's going to notice you if you're focused in that moment because they'll catch you either way. They'll catch you whether you're doing something or you're not, right? So always be on. So I think that's kind of how it was, and I started doing some artwork, some side hustles, doing sort of everything from billboards to signs and that sort of thing. And that was sort of where everything started to sort of take. Um, but I worked hard. I didn't have a whole lot growing up. We had 5 kids, only one parent working. And so any sport we got involved in, we had to work for it. So if we wanted to get new skis, we worked for it. If you wanted to get like any kind of gear that we needed to get, we had to sort of put that money aside and make that happen. And but I'll say this: it's just you be passionate about what you want, what you're going after. When you hit the workforce, make impressions. Um, but I think that you and I could probably talk about this in great length. It's relationships.
Hmm.
It's how you navigate relationships in life and at work. If you get out what you put into it, it's a real thing. And so for myself, I think that early on, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I didn't have any sort of, I wasn't nervous about things because I just jumped in. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And it's funny when you're young and naive and lack the experience to know better, you do these things. And if you keep your head down and you work hard, things start to fall into place. And that's kind of what happened. It's a funny thing when you try to venture into business. It's how you can bring people alongside yourself. Like I built a business with 2 partners. I've been doing this now for what, 28, 29 years or something at this point.
Wow.
I want to
Wow.
say that the people that I work alongside, I work with them. They don't work for me. We work together. I do my part, they do their part. And that's become more and more relevant year after year as you go and you do the things. I take joy in the success of the people around me. I impart in them and they impart in me. And I've forged an awful lot of relationships over the years, but it's, can you convince, can you get buy-in? Will they come alongside yourself? Will they follow you to do the things that you're hoping to do and to accomplish? And then they start to figure out what they want along the ride. So I think that's the success. That's how things fell into place for myself. Is that I found a good group of people, and that attracts more good people. You find the ones that are fighting to try to make this thing happen, this dream that you've laid out that they bought into. And listen, I'm overjoyed to see how people have grown and take on responsibility, grown in roles, got better at their craft. By doing this as long as I've been doing it, I've been hiring people since '98.
Wow.
So I've had some people in my life. I think one of my partners, it's almost what, 29, 30 years now. And the other partner's over 20. Those are the kind of things that um, you get lucky. That if they see that you're working hard, if they see the commitment and the sacrifice you make, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. He's all in.
Hmm.
That opens it basically reassures them like, hey, if we're all in too, and then they start to see the results of it. Listen, we were the small studio that could. There's no only way to describe that. For anybody that doesn't know, um, I make animated cartoons for a living.
Best
So,
job in the world.
you know what I mean? I got some really nice people that are out there that I get a chance to work with, but there's about 200 people that have been working with me for almost 20 years.
If I can insert myself there, and I listen patiently because you say so many things that resonate with me, Kyle, and I'm just like, oh my God, like compartmentalizing thoughts. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm taking notes because I really don't want to lose sight of some of the great nuggets and gems that you're laying out here. And you so perfectly and succinctly captured the business side and how it plugs in play about the culture piece and things that come out of there right away, going back to, when you were a dishwasher and want to be the best dishwasher, right? And I immediately thought about my first job when I moved to Ottawa. I was a busboy at Chima Hotel.
Yeah.
And I never forgot one of the he's an old guy, and he ran, like, he basically was the maitre d kind of guy, whatever, and we'd get slammed often with bus tours and everything else. And
Wow.
he wouldn't just be like, "Hey, Steph, can you pick up the pace and can you go, try and turn over more tables so we can get people seated quicker, whatever." He was in there. He was in there getting his hands dirty at his age and hustling to get those tables cleared. And we're going to get into mentorship. We're going to get into the examples that we are surrounded with and just the sheer impact that has. But you have to be open to wanting to do that level of work, right?
Yeah.
And I can go all day with that. And then you talk about, you know 29 years, 98. Holy crap, you were hiring people at 98. Now,
Yeah.
in my various gigs, I've done a lot of hiring and letting go. And there's times where you think you've made a good decision of who you brought onto the team, and you're like, well, didn't see that coming. But lessons learned, and you become a little bit more savvy in your process. But when you speak about bringing people on and wanting them to buy into the dream and the goal, and I found that oftentimes that works and it connects when it's shared, and it's in part and parcel of their values too, what they value, right? And also the other thing that you mentioned is when you have that longevity, right? You've had relationships that long. That's unheard of. And for viewers that are listening to this, you may go, wow, he's lucky. You said the word lucky, and I will give you that a little bit for sure. But all of it is not just fortune. It is a lot of work, because quality takes time.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah.
sure it wasn't all bed of roses and building your business and
Nope.
going through life. It wasn't just easy street. I'm sure
No.
there's some stories, because I've been there myself too. Is how do you circle the wagons and you rally the troops, and for how those people to believe in getting through the hard times? So I guess that's a question. Are there examples for you that you're able to share around, when times were a little bit more difficult, and how you would bring, your team together and still buying into that dream?
Yeah, we had a show that I took it under at one point, and I think, yeah, I think that the biggest thing that happened for us was we got caught in a situation where they cut the budget. Schedule was still in place. It was aggressive. We didn't quite have enough manpower with the reduction of the budget that we had. So we basically, my two partners and I, went out to the floor and basically just told them the situation. And that transparency is important. You basically you let them know. I'm like, hey, listen, this happened outside of our control. We have the ability to rise to this challenge that's in front of us. Is everybody in? We didn't tell anybody to do anything. We asked them for help, and then they came through for us. That there's about 30 of us at the time when that happened. And I'll say this, we recognize that group because they were part of. They helped us get over that hump. That was probably the make it or break it point for us as a company. But you ask people like, hey, we need your help. Are you in? Can you? And they did. But you never forget. You take care of them. I think that's the most important piece, is that if people are working with you to accomplish something, don't forget them. Take care of them. Look after them. And for the most part, the majority of them are still with us today. But that's a big piece for us. And here's something: when you go through that kind of a situation, there's a bonding that takes place. We got through that together. We came out the other side intact. And he goes, most people thought, there's no way they're going to get that. There's no way they're going to get that done. At that time, competition was aggressive, and everybody would have loved to have seen us fall and falter and grab our staff. So I think that ultimately, I think that's what it comes right down to. It's basically you be open, you be honest with people, you trust them in knowing that there's a bit of a relationship already in place at that point, and they know that you wouldn't have come to them for help if it wasn't dire. So
You know, when I listen to you, I don't listen to just your words, and you forget, but I get reminded very quickly just how the genuine human being you are, and you can't fake that, and you hear it in your voice, you hear it in your tone, and that comes through when you're in a leadership role or you're that boss per se or supervisor. That you're, it's not about what comes out of your mouth; it's how it sounds and it feels. Because I'm sure you've heard some people say something, but you knew they didn't mean it,
yeah,
and that's the grossest feeling in the world. Now, the other thing you said that I really like that I latched onto. So I do a lot of leadership coaching and mentoring, and one of the things that I speak quite a bit about is when we ask for help. And you talked about that, right?
yeah.
So I'll touch on transparency in a second, and because you're saying so many good things, I got to slow down my enthusiasm here, Kyle. Is I go, when the shit hits the fan, when things are going sideways and they're not going the way you want as a boss and a supervisor, and if you stand up in the middle of the room, and this is where you can take a really, really quick poll of what your true leadership impact has been and looks like in a moment when you say, hey, I need your help with.
Yeah.
You either have a scenario where it's a F you, buddy, where have you been in my effing life? Blah, 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 for many different reasons, what it can look like in an organization. And it's like, no, I'm not going to throw you a life ring if you fall into the water off of a cruise ship. Versus having the type of culture and the type of relationships that you've fostered and you've built and you've nurtured along the way, where everybody's pushing each other to get to the front of the line
Yeah.
to say, what do you need, Kyle? What do
Yeah.
you guys need? And that transparency piece is where people, oh, I don't, can't be transparent, and I am too. I'm the same way. I lead a team and everything else. And it's like, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
You're a human being. I go, I make mistakes all the time. I call myself all the time. I'm like, oh man, that's a big boo boo. But here it is. What did we learn? And when you provide again that example, then it allows other people to let their hair down too, and to say, hey, you got to look softly in the mirror. You're going to make mistakes, but how do you want to fix it, and how do we fix it together, right? And what do you need from me? I'd always say, hey, Kyle, okay, we're kind of in a pickle here. Sure, right? What's the most correct outcome we want to achieve? Okay, we flesh that out, and then I would always say, what do you need from me, Kyle?
Yeah.
So I just love just the last bit that you shared, and it shows why you've been successful with people. And there's not many people who can master their relationship, but you had that nailed down pretty early on. So that's what I like about you.
Listen, you know what? We've all watched people that we grew up with. I wouldn't say high school was a really good training ground for all of us for different reasons. Um, there was a lot of drinking in my family at the time, which led to an awful lot of color and a lot of different stories over the years. But what it was, I watched them come through that, get on the other side of it. But here's the part that's the most important. When you love someone, you see them not being seen in the best light. It's hard.
Mhm.
And I think empathy and wanting the best in people is the most important part we can do in life, period. And that's at work and at home and our personal lives. And so, you're the peacekeeper. You're doing
Mm.
damage control. You're following up to make sure that everything that went wrong the day before got fixed up the next day. There's the hey, that follow through, that follow up is so 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 important. Giving people the benefit of the doubt, knowing people are going to make mistakes. I think that this is an important piece that I think that, especially now, more with what in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen it, unfortunately, where people aren't given the chance to come back from a mistake they've made.
Mm.
So you have to have that sort of grace to say, I know you made a mistake. Let's go on the other side of it. It's talking to the group of people that might have been affected by this situation and walking through it with them as much as anybody else, or the person that actually was the one that wronged everybody else or frustrated or disappointed everybody else. And that's important. It's like family. The reason why we succeeded and we're as close as we are as a family is because we were quick to forgive.
Mm.
It's everybody always says forgiveness is an interesting thing. He goes, I'll forgive, but I won't forget. Well, I mean, there's that, but I mean, The most important piece is like it's that journey. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. We all have these ebbs and flows in the course of our production over the course of a year. And I think that that's an important piece. It's like, hey, this is a little bit of a down moment, but I'm going to get you on the other side of it. And we'll have a good moment on the mountaintop on the other side. So it's a big piece.
Man, you had me thinking because, we talked about, alcohol. It was a significant part of my childhood growing up in our household too. And let me tell you, and everything that comes with that, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. And navigating is a word you use. You're navigating emotionally every day through that, and you're like, okay, what's tomorrow is okay. The dust is settled, but then you kind of feel like the storm brewing again, and here comes another battle. And but that's battling and battling and battling, which you relate to. Yeah, it's you have me thinking, Kyle, because I mean the whole forgive part.
Mhm.
I'm pretty good at it, but I can't say that I'm quite as what I say is comfortable with it maybe as where you are. And family, you bring up family, is it's absolutely wonderful to know that you as a group of people were able to get to the other side in light of the things that have transpired. But that's where that collaboration comes from, because the struggles for me were always trying to bridge the gap. I'm always that guy, the mediator like you. I want everything to be good, man. I want harmony, man. Can't we just all get along? And it's like, fuck, that's not how the real world works. We're all different people with different stuff and stresses in our lives and challenges. And, we trip up but everybody's got to want it.
Well, it's an interesting thing. You accept for people where they're at.
Mm,
Like you might have a personality type that you're never going to get close, but you have the appreciation that you grew up together. I find this about family. They know you more than and longer than anyone else in your life. It's an interesting piece. They walk through some of the most vulnerable moments that you shared. Their shared experiences that you go through in life. So they always have those relatable moments that you catch up on. But listen, no situation is perfect. But I'll say it's like you just come to grips where like, what's the best way of saying this? Honor them as a family member. Like it's just like he goes, they'll always be a family member. You're always going to be blood, right? And he goes, even when something goes wrong, there's still always still going to be a family member on the other side of this thing. Um, you might not be best friends. You might not. He goes, but you still love them. It's an interesting piece. You don't always like. There's always those moments where you're not like, do you know what I mean? You
oh
love.
yeah, oh yeah, oh I do, yeah,
And
yes.
he goes,
Oh, I really don't like you right now. I really don't like you right now.
but I think that,
Um,
yeah,
Yeah, that's really good advice, Kyle. And I think you're going to have me. That's what I like about these shows, because my guests always have me thinking and reflecting about things in my life that I'm still trying to work through, and it's always a work in progress, right? But
yeah.
is really the point you made is, um, yeah, you don't. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be your best friend. Like you have different personality types, and it's finding, I guess, a groove that works with that person. You may like, hey, you know what? Catch a movie with you, maybe not too much in deep talk and whatever. Spend a little high level social time, and it's where it ends and where it's good. Whereas with other people, you're really tight, you're close, you have common interests and passions. Um, but yeah, I see. For me, I've always struggled with that piece, Kyle. And I've gotten better, and that's a challenge and through therapy. And it would be, and my expectations were always really too high,
Yeah,
too
I
high.
understand that.
And who always got disappointed, who always got hurt, who
Yeah.
always felt left like they were wronged or trespassed? Me. And some smarter people than me along the way have went, well, Steph, kind of like what you just shared, it does kind of work just that way,
Yeah.
so that's really, really, really insightful, and I appreciate that. And a couple other things you said that I wrote down, it's like follow through and follow up. I mean, I can go so many different directions in there, whether it's family life, personal life, or even work, right? Following through and following up, that shows that you mean what you say, right? And I always say it's not what you say, it's what you do. right? And the other thing you said earlier is, and I've always said this to my daughters and other people, is whatever team you're a part of, whether it's an extracurricular team, a sports team, a team at work, demonstrate value early and demonstrate it often. So you're the kind of person that people are going to want to work with, and that
Yeah.
they're going to invite you to the party for, projects and moving forward and moving on. So you have my head reeling. So the other thing too that's interesting that you may not know, because you did the culture piece so well earlier, is there's actually 81 definitions for the
Wow.
word culture.
Okay.
And I did some research on that. And there in itself is why it's an elusive topic. Why companies will say, well, we're going to hire some guru, motivational, inspirational outfit and
Yeah.
rally us all together for a week. And on the other end, we're going to come out brand new, shine like a new dime, everybody aligned, and we're going to have this instant culture. I'm like, first you, first you have to clearly define what that is for yourself and your organization, and are you inclusive in that in that process, which is everybody's at the table to share. Most times it's just, hey, we're rolling this out, this is what we're doing now, it's the latest flavor from Baskin Robbins, you're all going to love it, and then
Well,
and it falls flat on his face, right?
you need participation. I think that ultimately your leadership are like parents. Okay, it's the best way to describe it. No one wants to see the parents fight to get, in front of them. Like that's the whole thing. It's just like, shit. Like how are we going to navigate this, right? So it's the biggest thing is that it's a you come together as sort of like that balanced front that you're in agreement whether you're not. It's like one of those type of things where you're presenting this in agreement, what we're doing, this is what we're doing, it, how you handle it. But I think ultimately with culture is this: you have your best workers, and they have the biggest voice in the room because they're the best workers. They carry the largest load. They take the responsibility. They're accountable for what the work that they're responsible for. All that's very, very important. When we talk about culture, it's your core values. I think for you, it's trying to establish what that means for you as a company. I think for us, we're in a creative environment, so it's, are we supporting the development of the people that are working for us? Are they getting better at their craft? Are they identifying where they want to go in their career? Are we creating a safe environment? Are we providing that extra help? Are we inspiring? Motivation, inspire, and inspiration are funny, different things. And sometimes you can't always motivate somebody, but you can inspire them, which then motivates them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's an important piece. But I think that they know from us and how we work with each other and how we interact with our crew that we care about them. I think this is a really important piece. Is how corporate are you? Like he goes, my biggest thing is that my people are the studio, period. It's the best way I can describe it. And so because of that, you can only do as much as the team is able to accomplish, what they can create. What are the boundaries is basically based on the skill set of the people that work for you. Talent attracts talent, and that's an important piece. But like I said, how we treat each other. We joke around about this a little bit because it's like when you're earlier in your career, it's tough and it's rough, but you can still have a good time in and amongst the chaos. Like there's still moments that you can get people to kind of laugh and go, "Nah, this is crazy, isn't it?" And the answer is yes. And you get on the other side of it, and I think you become battle worn because we've shared in these experiences together. We've cared for the people. You know that someone has. This is the part that I enjoy the most. When your crew, the people you work alongside, recognize that someone's having a hard time, and they pick up the slack. It's an interesting piece where inadvertently, without having to be asked, they jump in. They help that person out. And people notice. I think this is the most important piece. Everybody watches everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really important piece. And so when someone sees they're pathetic, they want to make sure that that person is doing well, they're being taken care of, we've helped them out, it's going to reciprocate at some point, another stage. You'll have a moment and they'll jump in. And I think that's an important piece. So anyways, cultures is a thing that takes time to grow and to develop. It's trust. Trust is key.
You have a very deep understanding of that, Kyle, and it shows in the way you articulate it. And that's the reason I come back to a word that you used earlier, which is really what props it all up, is how you bond.
Yeah.
And through the highs and lows and those, peaks and valleys, is finding the levity, right? Finding the levity in those moments where you said it perfectly, is crazy, eh? It is. Let's just call it like it is. Let's see. Let's not sugarcoat it. Let's not pretend. That's that transparency part again, right? Where you can let everybody in the room go, oh, it's okay to be like stressed out and holy shit, like, is this going to end? Like, are we going to get past this? And then you look at your leaders and then they're like, hey man, I'm seeing it like you are. It is. You're seeing it the way it is, man. But having done so much work in fostering and building that culture and bonding through those times is where you're able, like you said, a person will just show up. And I love that, when a person just is at a place and a level on the team where they're just, the intuition is there. It's kind of like, I don't know. My analogy that comes quickly to mind is, you're a surgeon, and then boom, it's like, oh, that was actually the next tool that I was thinking of having, and boom, you're one step ahead of me.
Yeah.
And that's what I love, hiring great people who are passionate, getting them on the bus, on the right seats on the bus, and just getting the hell out of their way. And then you also touched on something that I value, which I value in you as well, is the supporting piece. Is be able to be there to support and recognize, to say, hey, there's a gap there for that person. They may not all have everything that they need quite yet,
Yeah.
but that's my responsibility as a leader, to recognize that and have those conversations and to help build that person up. I always say, go for the gap. Like in the book Legacy, about the New Zealand All Blacks, it's always about, where are weak points, and let's work on those, and let's go for the gap. So you clearly have a very high level of engagement with your people, Kyle. That really rings true with what you're saying.
I think the bigger the organization you build, you're trying to find people that are going to be you when you're not around. People that are going to advocate for you when you're not around. I think that it's part of your mentorship and basically your succession plan, in a roundabout way. We're going to be handing off a baton at some point. Are the people ready? Have you gotten them ready? If you didn't feel like, he goes, if you leave the company, there should be no gap. There should be no hole. The people should be able to take that baton and run with it. I think that's a big, big piece for us. It's like, he goes, everybody has a number one all the way through in every department we have. Everybody should have a number one, so that when you go away, if you're sick, you go on a holiday or something, you can actually enjoy that time, either getting better or, taking a break for life or whatever that's going to be. I think it's important. But, that's probably the most important piece that I can say, is that everybody is grooming someone. Everyone's preparing someone take over for them at some point. If you have, if the team believes that, you've got their back in growing that maturity and what they've learned over the years, um, it's funny. A lot of people, there's in the creative world, everyone's afraid of that you're going to train someone you out of a job. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I train this person, they're going to replace me because they're going to be a little bit cheaper than for me. Like, it's the big concern everybody used to have. But if you're consistent, if you honor that member that has groomed and invested and poured into all these people, they have loyalty because of that to that person. It's an interesting mix. My hope is that there's leaders that, people are buying into as well, not just myself anymore. You realize the bigger you get, the more people are having to sit at the table.
Yep.
It's important. They have their experience that they bring to the table that they want to share, and hopefully it fits in with what you're trying to do. But yeah, I think it's a big piece. Like, we've grown up to over 600 and something people now at this point, and
wow,
you get to a place where you have a very large leadership team that you rely on to carry this message down through the team. It's very, very important.
So I like Roger's comments. So just to give you creative people. So Roger has done all my 4 logos for me. So he's out of Austin, Texas. So Actually, Kyle's helped me out with some logos in the past too. So from
Yeah, Roger.
creative person to another creative person. So Roger's a gem. Now you transitioned very, very smoothly. I will use Roger's word there, smoothly, from the themes of, building a business or culture into mentorship and succession.
Right.
Another thing that I'm extremely, extremely jazzed up about. And so, yeah, there comes the insecurity of people in leadership, right? People who hoard information, people who are not transparent, like we talked about, right? And they're just keeping everything a secret, so that the fear that they're going to replace them. For me, I'm like you. I'm cut of the same cloth. I'm like, man, you know what? I recognize talent and you're good. And so how can I exploit that? How can I help you be better than me? And you know what? You should be. And the other part around leading, so my passion, my jam, I always say, is building, developing, and leading really strong teams. Right? That's just, I'm terrible at a lot of things, but people I seem to do okay with.
Yeah.
And recognizing that, and helping be a bridge for them, and having just really good, candid conversations about who they are, what they aspire to do. But and that touches in on professional development. And you get asked some, you'll ask people, hey, where do you want to be in 2 years? What do you need? And then they tell you. They take the time. At face value, they think you're listening.
That's it.
And then all of a sudden they say, I want to do these 2 or 3 courses, and you're like, yeah, we'll make that happen for you, and it never materializes.
Right.
So that ties into, again, following up and following through, and going, hey, Kyle, guess what? You know what? You're next up for this course. Boom, it's da-da-da, we're going to pay for it, and away you go. And the person's like, oh my goodness, I
Mhm.
didn't have to ask again. It came around.
Yeah.
And the person, you build that loyalty, right? And I don't know about you, Kyle, but when you talk about being away or being sick, right? You're not at the helm. You have to be able to share the helm. I like to sleep well at night. You know, I like to know if I'm not around, that business will run like usual. And
Yeah.
my approach to the team is always making sure that they have all the tools that they need. They're all very comfortable with what their tasks are and what they need to do. If there's any doubt or any questions, they know who they can reach out for that support.
Yeah.
And I always say, hey, I'm gone for 2 weeks. I don't need any emails. I go, if I can't help you in the moment, I shouldn't be part of that email. Right? I go, if I am gone and I can't help you, you got to be able to figure that stuff out. So teams would be like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. So you seeing me on a whole bunch of stuff that when I come back, the 2 weeks that you're catching up on, and you go, I hope this has been handled and taken care of. So I hear you, right? And so a question for you:
Yeah.
600 people in your organization.
Yep.
That's saying something. That's saying something in growing a business, especially in a very competitive industry.
Yeah.
Is how do you manage that many people? So I don't know how many leaders you have in your organization and kind of where your org chart is, but how do you manage that many leaders? And it's like I always say, it's like being a parent. If you've got 10 people, you've got 10 kids, man, and they all have their ideas, they all have their opinions,
Yeah.
and they all tell you how it should be. So how do you manage that, Kyle? How do you make that thrive?
Conditioning. I think it's like you've got like a senior leadership calls that you put in place. For us, there's production staff that manage everything that you have going on. You've got your technology groups that keep the lights on, make sure that people are efficient in what they're doing, and you have creatives. So we have this triangle of teams in place. And we have leadership across each department as it goes through like this production flow that we have, and you have multiple productions going on at the same time. But I'll say this: so you basically it's I would say 25 people probably. And let's say if I have my inner circle, maybe it's about 6 to 10, and then another group that you break down into, and then another group that goes down even further past that point. But you have people that you have to trust. You have to have a group of people that have a heart for the crew that they work alongside. I think that's the most important piece for myself. People that genuinely are looking into how people are doing, not just at work but in life. And I think that pays dividends, because people know that you're genuine about how are you doing? Are you doing all right? Are you doing okay? You're managing stress. You talk people down off the ledge on a regular basis.
Yeah.
My production teams are like the cheerleaders. They're the sounding boards. They are sort of managing situations every day. Um, we're handlers in a roundabout way is the best way when you look at kind of like, all right, we have a couple moments here. Let's pick and choose. They fight on your behalf. It's so that's the most important thing for the your staff is that the leadership are fighting for you and on on your behalf to make sure that you have a decent work schedule, decent workload, that you have a life, that there is a balanced life of some kind. Um, and not, there's going to be moments where it's going to get tight. It's going to get a little aggressive here and there, but at the end of the day, we still have to have a life outside of what we do, and that's an important piece. I never believed in that statement, life balance. It's kind of like work life integration. Um,
Very true.
like you condition those around you to expect what to expect, to learn to say, hey, this is going to happen. And like life happens, production happens. There are things that are going to go wrong, and they're going to go wrong every day. And I think the biggest thing is just managing, like I said, stress all the way through this. It's an important, probably the most important thing that we do in our job.
That is a really great way to put it because really that's what it comes down to. I never actually, thought of it or looked at it that way, but that's really what it is. And you said something else that's key and shows that you've spent a lot of time at the helm of leadership, and it's setting expectations. And I talk a lot about this in leadership too. I said there's a difference between setting expectations and setting clear ones. And I've asked a lot of leaders and people who are responsible for helping others conduct their work in a certain way, and then they wonder why they're getting maybe lackluster results from their people. And I said, well, how do you rate yourself on how you set expectations? You set good ones. And then I listen, and everybody's like, the egos, are like, yeah, of course I do. That's why I'm sitting in this chair. That's why I have this title and this business card. And then you ask for examples. Tell me about an example of how you set good expectations. And then as we start peeling that onion, it becomes very clear that people go, hey, I guess I don't really set really clear expectations, right? So that's always a fun conversation for me. And that's why I'm glad you kind of touched on that piece. And I wrote something down that I absolutely will keep forever and take it into some of my conversations going forward is the people that you have on your team, the 6 to 10, or the leaders who you said they need to have the heart for the crew they work alongside.
Mhm.
That touches my heart, Kyle. I mean, because that's what I've always believed in. If you're going to be a leader, you gotta want it, man. You gotta love it, and you gotta love people. And you bring up the word empathy, right? From the Greek to suffer with, And if you can't understand that, appreciate that, and be that empath, I mean, that's why so many leaders abandon their posts because it's overwhelming, it's stressful because one way or another they just don't have the skill set, and that's not their fault. It's either they got put in that position because the company's growing, and Kyle, you've been here the longest, and we're hiring 10 new people, new department.
Yeah.
Bazinga, you're now a new parent. But did we set up that person, right? That comes into mentorship, because I have a question for you on the mentorship side of things.
Yeah.
So I've seen a lot of people flail and suffer at the post of leadership, all because they weren't groomed for it. They weren't prepared and set very clear expectation to say it's a lonely place. At times, it's a very lonely place. I think you have a thought there you wanted to share, Kyle.
I'll say this. I'll say, you know what it is that I think that when you look at leadership, know your strengths and weaknesses.
Mhm.
Surround yourself with those that basically that bolster the things that you don't do as well. I think that that's the most important piece that we can do when you talk about leadership across such a big group. Stay in your lane. Know what you're good at, and
Mhm.
it goes. Like I said, surround yourself with people that are smarter than yourself, people that can sort of that bring that to the table that you're missing. Like, listen, here's the thing: the longer you do something, you're going to get surface knowledge about everything. But when you have to get into the weeds, when you have to be able to explain something to different groups of people, um, it's nice to have some other people that are in there. It's an important piece for ourselves is that it's respect. When you're open and honest about where you might fall short with those that are close to you and around you, it's important because they're like, ah, shit, okay, great. But they also just reassures them why they're there. And he goes that leadership isn't one person's job.
No.
No, leadership is an interesting piece. When I was younger coming up in the companies that I worked for early on in my career, did my job thinking that I owned the joint, even back then. And so it makes you think about, you pay attention to more detail than you would if you didn't think it that way. It's an important piece. It's preparing you for the next level of responsibility, and you're already doing the job. It's like, what would I love w- learning from somebody else's mistakes. It's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Amen.
Like it's you grow up, just pay attention. Like, it's the funniest thing. Take a moment, look your head up every once in a while, look around, find out what's going outside of your department, what's going on in the company itself. Understand and appreciate the business. Here's the problem, and this happens all the time. We have perspective because we see the whole picture. Most people don't.
Hmm.
Talking about, I've got a forecast in place. I have numbers that I have to hit. I have margins that I'm supposed to be responsible for people that I work with and work for. And some other people might not understand the choices or the decisions you make. It's really, really important. So you have the luxury of having all of the information to
Yeah,
make a decision.
very true.
Others don't. So when someone gets upset, the only reason why they're getting upset is because they know a portion of what and why you did what you did,
Yeah,
or reason why you did it. So I think it's important to have those moments and to learn, teach, give those people yet again the benefit of the doubt, even though they're upset. They can be upset based on what they know. They're like, yeah, if I only knew that too, man, I'd be pissed too. Like, like why the hell would they make that call? Like, why did they take that show? And I think that those are the reasons that um, it's important, like I said, that people start to learn what's going on outside of what their department or their role is within the company, and start to learn the business as well. Um, it's a funny thing. Like, we have an open door policy. If anybody has a question, we're available. We have teams, and so everybody has access to me whenever they want to. They can
very
reach me
cool.
anytime. And so I have an executive assistant for a reason, so they can filter and help. Trying to make sure that we can fit everybody in. But that's an important piece that we have so that we don't react into situations when someone's upset with us. They're upset because something happened to them that, giving that explanation or giving them that backstory so that they can actually understand why you did it. It's a wonderful opportunity to fix that situation up, so no one it doesn't there's a that problem doesn't fester with that person.
Oh wow, Kyle, son of a gun! You could single-handedly just do this show by yourself. This is fantastic, and I'm just gonna back up. I wrote a few little notes, but um, yeah, anytime there's a lack of information for anyone, it starts to make people squirrely and crazy, right? Then
Yeah,
they start to fill in the gaps themselves. It's like a paint by number. It's like, okay, well, I've given you 2 out of 6 colors to do your paint by number, so clearly you're not going to have the picture that you're like, what am I painting here?
yeah,
So naturally, there's frustration. So listening to you along the way, this far into the show, you clearly see things very broadly, and I call it people who have emotional intelligence. Buzzword that's been around for 20 years. They see the nuances. They see but beyond the data. They see beyond the hard evidence of stuff. They see the nuances of people and how they react, and they'll catch a glimpse. I call glimpses. For me, it's a glimpse where I go, there's something that's telling. But most leaders and bosses and supervisors don't want to deal with it because emotionally they're not equipped to maybe have a conversation to hear somebody who's not happy.
right.
Hey Steph, I was really not cool with something you said, and the team's feeling this way and whatever. And so wow, people just kind of run the other way, or they just say, too bad, it's my way of the highway. So you're clearly very comfortable in your skin to be able to address those things. And you said something super cool that I like when you said, early on in other gigs, like, hey, I walked around like I owned the joint. And it's funny because that's kind of always been my approach into everything I did, right? You said right at the onset of the show is be passionate about everything you're going to touch. Honestly, I mean, that's me. It's like anything I'm going to touch that's worthwhile, that's going to jazz me up, I'm going to be extremely passionate about it.
Yeah,
That's the difference between renting and owning. And that's why for you, having the attitude of owning the joint allowed you to see more,
yeah,
allowed you to learn more, and also learn for those other people's mistakes because your head's up. which is some of the terminology that you used. So, I mean, just the other thing too, I wrote down, sorry, is when we call out our own mistakes publicly and openly amongst, yeah, people who are not maybe in leadership, who are, we call them rank and file. Well, that's a bad way of saying it. Is I always feel like when other leaders and mentors in my life have done that, it's like it gives me permission to be human.
Yeah.
I have a moment where I feel like I've had permission to be human and that I am not perfect and I will make mistakes, but I'm going to be in an environment of trust and that I'm not going to get eviscerated for making a mistake versus going to be like, hey, dude, yeah, right, that's it. It happens here. It happens here. It's common, it's frequent, and it's natural.
Yeah.
And so there's a reason why you're at 600 strong. There's a reason why you've survived through what you've survived through for this many years. And the question I had for you about mentorship,
Yeah.
do you have any formal mentorship programs or kind of approaches in your company internally?
I think that for us at different levels on the creative level, we'll start with that as a good example. There are people that have developed an eye and a sense of timing for animation. So they work alongside the staff, showing them tips and tricks and showing them, seeing the confidence in the choices they make. So working and sitting alongside them. It's an important piece. I think that when we're sort of raising people up, we want to give them examples of where you can aspire to. Like, hey, here's an example of a scene that was done by another person. This is the quality level that they were able to achieve here. That's where we want to eventually get you to there, to get to that same level. So what we do is for most people, while we were working in house, this is the challenge. We're working from home now. But one of the challenges, we used to put people in between really talented staff. So if you're coming out of school, we put you in with somebody that's got a good work ethic, that has a good skill set, and through osmosis in a roundabout way, because they're seeing the speed and the confidence of the choices they're making in order to move forward and move ahead. They're like, wow, it's not just the quality; it's the speed at which they make that they get through their workload. It's impressive when you see that focus. If you've got a bad habit, you're like, man, okay, leadership is an interesting thing. You've identified people that are your strongest stakeholders. Basically, you want people to emulate them. It's the best way of describing it. Do you trust the roles that the people that you put in the roles to mentor and train and to lead and supervise? And then I'm just saying, hey, just be like them. Like it's like they're the best examples I can say. We've had everything from adopt an artist, where you basically, all the seniors get one as they come into the studio for the first time. We have with leadership, it's the choices and decisions that you make every day in the room with them. When you come together as a group to make a decision on something, they're learning by seeing and working alongside yourself when you're making choices. How you handle yourself on a call when you're front facing with a client. That's another big piece. Probably one of the biggest pieces is like they learn from watching you and how you handle decisions when things go sideways. Your best learning moments when things go wrong. Your best moments are when things have gone off the rails. So how you handle and walk through those things that happen, people are learning by how you react to those things. It's very, very important. So I think that for a lot of us, because we've been doing it for so long, um, I trust a lot more people now to be able to sit in front of a client and not worry what they're going to say, because there's an honesty there. Um, there's experience there now. They know how I've reacted to situations, and that informs them on how they should react. So that's an important piece.
You're writing a book soon there, Mr. McDougall, because this sounds just like an audio book in itself. I'm going to be listening to this show over and over again. Now, you're touching on things too, like for me, I always sought after and craved for good mentors.
Mhm.
As much as I've been a coach the majority of my life in one form or another, which I love coaching. I love eliciting the absolute highest potential that's possibly there in a human being and being a part of that journey with that individual or even a team. It's so much fun. I think there's nothing more rewarding to me than to see the fruits of that are born of that. But examples, I always tell people exactly that. Are you providing the example for which of what you want as far as results and the people on your team.
Yeah.
And it's another head scratcher. And I'm like, well,
Well,
what do you mean by that, Steph? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What do I mean?
yeah,
Right. But it's easier said than done,
yeah.
because you said it earlier. Now I have a bit of a steel trap for a mind, and it's probably going to be the first thing that's going to go with H. But is um, you were talking about, now it's escaped me, so I just, obviously the sometimers is kicking in. It'll come back to me. But as far as providing the examples, for people is critical. It's crucial. And you said something else that I like, is the way you behave and the way you react informs. There's a good word. It informs, because that's a transfer of information about how they should respond and react to a situation. It's kind of like, this is my expectation because I'm seeing my mentor, my leader, perform. And oh, you said everybody's watching. Everybody's watching, whether it's good or bad.
Listen, I think that we always have calls after our client calls to regroup and to go through play by play how it all, how everything transpired. Listen, when I've made mistakes, um, you acknowledge it and you point it out. In that moment, in that situation, I should have done this instead of this.
Hmm.
I think that's another thing too, is yet again making sure that you're using yourself as an example of a mistake that you made that they can learn from as well, and acknowledging it, going, "Hey, in the future, I should have did this. So please, when you get into a similar situation, do this." Not because it's like this, we're all human, and stress is even for people in our own roles. You get defensive because you care for the people that are doing the work, and when something comes under fire, you defend,
Mhm.
and you have your moments with that, right? And so, because you're taking care of your own, and so those things are going to happen sometimes, and sometimes you can always, emotion does creep in sometimes
Yeah.
into reactions that do play out, but I think it's important to acknowledge it, address it, and then hopefully, like I said, in the next situation that comes up, they see you make a better choice. Um, anyways, I think that those are the most important piece is like when you get people that come alongside yourself, this leadership group that you play a part in all of this. You need to open up. You need to sort of make sure that they're getting the exposure in every situation, whether it's financial, where it's communication. Communication is the biggest problem that every group, every organization, every business, communication is where everything falls short.
Yep.
That broken phone situation happens all the time. You're like, ah, shit, I didn't get around to that thing because something else sideswiped me on my way to doing that other thing. Ah, crap. And but it happens. It happens a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that the smartest thing that I ever gentleman that I worked with many, many years ago was a guy that believed in lists.
Hmm.
And it's like, hey, make a list. What do you have to accomplish today? Okay, so what didn't you get done at the end of the day? Put that as the first things that you need to do. The first thing when you work in, start your day the next day. Get those things off your list. Work through lists. They're important.
Yep.
It's a great exercise. It's a great sort of way. I think that if you're a leader, you're prepping before going into a meeting. At this end of the day, you're sort of looking back at your day going, okay, what did I learn from today? What do I have to do? It informs the choices in the meetings that I need to have moving forward. Who's missing the attention that they need? It's like you always have to be thinking about the big picture when it comes to the people so they don't feel like there's the number. You got to connect.
So if whoever is witnessing this show right now and watching and listening to Kyle, pretty much he's basically preaching to the choir, which is what I love, or it may be people are going to watch this later. This is all great stuff and it's magic when it comes together. But Kyle, does it not take an immense amount of energy to ensure not only you get through that list, but you get through that list not in a cursory fashion, that you give every item on that list the attention that it needs in
Yeah.
order for the result that you're looking for to occur? I'm a list guy too. I always prepare. I prepare mentally. I prepare every conversation before I have it.
Yeah.
I have my lists and I carry over. So I really appreciated that. Now, the other compliment I want to pay you, because because they're all well deserved. It shows that you're very committed to the harmony within your organization because of the comment you made earlier about when you get into a room that the decisions that you make with them is what you said.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you say that because for me, I'm always talking about inclusiveness. And when we're at the senior level and we're talking about stuff, I'm going to say, well, this decision or this change that you're looking to make, who does it all touch?
Yeah.
And they kind of look at me and go, well, no, it's just a change that I want to make because, it's just what I want. It needs to happen. And I go, oh, snap. I go, here we go. That's going to be a lead balloon for you, my friend. And, then you coach, right? Because, you can't, people are like pieces of wood, Kyle. This is another great quote, right? You can't take a high pressure washer to a piece of oak in hopes that it'll absorb some water. You got to take that same piece of oak and put it in a barrel of water and just let it soak for a couple of weeks. And then it'll be nicely fully saturated with the water or that wisdom that you need him to have. So to kind of round the corner on that, my idea, my statement is that inclusiveness. I say, who does it all touch? Make your list of who does it all touch and get them in a room. Make them part of that process. Make them part of that decision. Because at the end of the day, that buy-in that you're looking for in order to succeed in this new thing you're going to do, you're all holding yourself accountable. You're all giving yourself a virtual handshake and say, okay, so we've all collaborated and we're all collaboratively accountable because we included everybody in this process and in the conversation. And there's a lot of beauty and power in moments like that for people. Nothing says more that you actually do give a shit and that you're listening, you care, than actually getting people together. So I applaud you, my friend, for that.
I see the most important thing that when you're seeing people that are struggling, I feel like sometimes, my personality isn't always the best one. Which I mean by that is that there's a sensitivity about, when I didn't get a contract in fast enough. It's there's people that lose jobs, and for my inability of getting something in early enough or fast enough. There are things that you struggle with where you're like, shit, when someone leaves. That meeting, that conversation before they walk out the door was like, what did we fall short? What didn't we do to help you in the situation with the time that you were with us? I've been lucky, we've had people that come into our lives and then leave, but I was blessed during that time they were with us. Like we learned and we grew from that experience together. I have a young man, I guess he's not so young anymore. But there was a gentleman that came into my life. I want to say back around 2003, 4, and he's left us for a bigger opportunity, and I couldn't be more impressed with the opportunity that he found himself in. And you hate the fact that you're losing that wonderfully talented person, but you had all that time with him, and he imparted in all of the people that he worked alongside. And I think that's an amazing thing for myself. But the hardest thing for any leader, any supervisor, manager, anybody who's managing, like working with people or responsible for managing that group, is when a problem comes up and you can't fix it.
Mm.
And those are hard. I've had a lot of those where there's not a thing I can do to fix the situation they're in. They're in a stressful situation. You can see it. It's palpable. Like you can actually see them feel that weight in the situation they're walking through, and you don't have the ability to sort of jump in there and help because you can't find the people to help them.
You say something that I affects me in the marrow of my bones. I've been in scenarios like that where that complete and utter feeling of helplessness just takes a hold of every fiber in your body, where you go, I don't have a fix for this. I don't have an answer for this. And you that's where I will say, it's not always lonely, but that's where I will share that lonely. A lot of times leadership is lonely because you are behind the doors, like you said earlier, is people don't have the whole picture. They don't see what you're putting yourself in front, and it's things that you're trying to, you're trying to grease the skids for everybody. You're trying to minimize that stress, like you talked about so perfectly. Like that's what good leaders do. It's like you're greasing the skids so that people can do their job with harmony and as little disruption as possible.
Yeah.
So I hear you, Kyle, on that. When you have moments where you're like, yeah, this one here, I got nothing.
It's like you just can't find the people to support the team that needs the help, and you're just like, son of a gun, what the hell? And it's just it happens here and there, and the only thing you can do is defend your team as best you can, manage expectations with clients, try to give them as much relief as you can until the people walk through the door to help the others. So it's like you're just looking for breathing room. But I think that this is the most important piece as well when it comes with that. The clients that you work with, what kind of relationship do you have with them? What have you
Mhm.
done to sort of develop and grow that relationship? It's like, for us for years, it's like, you know, you think of them as part of the family. It's very, very important because they are. Like they are providing the work that we live off of, and we want getting a show. Just using it as an example, getting a show is like the lotto ticket. It's you win in the lottery. Like
Okay.
the volume of content that's out there that doesn't air doesn't make it to air, and so that creative, the person that you know created that show, they want to make sure that you're going to put the best thing you can on screen. Are you taking care of them? Because this might be the only show I ever make. And my whole
Right.
reputation is built from this thing. Take care of me.
Wow.
So I think it's important that you fight. Like I think this is the thing in anything you do. I remember early on, I my business went under. One of the first ones that I started. It's outside of my control. I couldn't do anything about it, but um, I didn't have the money when we went. We were forced into bankruptcy at the time, and the important piece was there was people that I owed money to, and they were just like myself. They didn't have the money to replace the loss that I had just um, afflicted upon them because of my situation. And over the year, the next couple to 2 to 3 years, I went back and I paid everybody off.
Wow.
It's an important piece because uh, something they did. There was a transaction that took place, and you got to make sure you honor that. You're going to stay in business, and that's an important piece that I think that other people can sort of look at. It's like, hey, if you want to do work in a specific city and with certain people, and you want to look at them in the eyes next time you see them,
Yeah.
pay up. Do your thing.
I appreciate that candor.
Yeah,
And it's yeah, it's the integrity part that's really hard to find a lot these days in a lot of individuals. And I call that like showing up, you know,
yeah,
show up,
yeah.
meaning whatever contract that you're in, whatever. Yep.
Battery's about to fade here.
Oh, whatever decision you made or promise you made, and that's why I say I don't ever use the word promise very often. And because I mean, growing up as kids, our dad was a pathological liar. And so as kids, we would hear promises every day about stuff we would get, things that were coming,
Yeah,
and it never materialized.
right.
And growing up in that environment with such an individual, trust was a very difficult thing for me. And if
Right.
somebody said they were going to do something for me,
Yeah,
I'd be like, yeah, it remains to be seen.
right.
Because expect the worst, hope for the best. You're never disappointed.
Yeah,
And so I had to kind of work through some of those things too. And then what also came from that too is I never let anybody help me ever, ever. And I'm still very difficult, Kyle, with that. I do for myself. I mean, I had to do for myself from a very early age. You touched on, not no money, whatever things that I want to see happen.
yeah.
But it was my way of having control in a certain area of my life that nobody can strip from me, right?
Gotcha.
Because if I put that in somebody else's hand, expecting those people to deliver and they don't deliver, then it directly impacts two things. It impacts me emotionally in the sense that I could just proven right that see, yeah, fucking people don't show up.
Yeah,
And secondly, now maybe an opportunity or something that I have my hopes for is now for naught. So anyway, I digress on that. I just wanted to kind of reciprocate a little bit on some of the things that you're saying strikes a chord in me, but you show up, and the fact that you're able to keep those relationships intact and whole is what people don't see and understand what it could mean in the future, right?
Yeah.
So that's very cool, Kyle. It's very cool. Um, I wanted to ask you a question. I want to compare notes on something. I'm curious because as I'm listening to you, I think you're coaching me a lot here today.
Forgive me. Keep
You
talking.
know, no, yeah, you do your thing. This is a casual show, my friend.
Sorry.
Is um, the so you obviously had to do a lot of hiring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Battery's about to go. Go ahead. Keep going.
You've had to do a lot of hiring, and and I have to along the way. And I have my list of things that I look for in
Okay.
a candidate or somebody that I'm considering. And I'm just curious to know, what are the things that you look for when you're in a room interviewing someone outside of those standard, ridiculous, bumbo jumbo interview questions that I just stay away from. I'm very casual. I'm conversational. What are some very key items that you look for in a person when you
Energy.
come? Energy. Okay, can you talk
Yeah.
about that?
Energy and optimism. I
Hmm.
think that the biggest things is people excited. I think when you're getting people that come out of college, university, people are starting with you for the first time, you need that energy. It's very, very important. I think that we feed off of it. Um, that's probably one of the most important pieces that we can do. I think in an interview, you're just trying to get a sense of their ability to communicate, trying to tell them a little bit about themselves and where you're going to go with it. But I never really know. I don't know until the first 3 months that I'm working with them. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, true enough.
It's like you've got some people that are just terrible at an interview,
Hmm.
and it's like it's going to be on the job sort of exposure that we're going to see what you're working with. I think that's probably the most important piece is that because I know some people that do terrible interviews because they're just nervous, that they're sort of they beat themselves up, and once they get off when they feel like they're off the rails, they can't come back from it during that moment. But you get them in a work situation, and they perform great. I think that you're dealing with a full spectrum of personalities, and everything from your introvert to the extrovert of like what you're going to get. And I think it's like you're never going to know until there are problems of
Yep.
really what you're working with. Yeah.
Oh my God, thanks for that because it's very validating what you just shared. The whole performance because I mean you don't know, right? You can either interview extremely well, and I've had people like that, and then you're like, once performance time came around, it was like, oh man, this is a shit show. And then you had some people, oh, okay, well, you know what, just the meat and potatoes are there, whatever, and then they kind of really rise to the occasion and they show you what they're made of and what they can do, right? And so on the performance side, in one of my previous gigs, I changed the probationary period. I went to the CEO and I said, this doesn't work. So we were hiring people for account executives in the insurance space and the financial technology space.
Right.
And you were paid as an account executive to study, and you had up to 3 months to write your life insurance, your LOQP exam.
Okay.
So you're getting paid your full salary without doing any work.
Yeah.
So you could take 3 months, write your exam, you passed, but
Yes.
then all of a sudden you've crossed your probationary period.
Yeah.
And I went, but I haven't even seen this person perform yet. I can't even see how they're going to deal with our clients and the client facing and the relationships and all that very, very important stuff.
Yeah.
So I changed it to 6 months. So I was pretty proud of myself there. Policy changing for building quality in an organization. And I want to share something that I look for in people.
Hmm.
So you're interviewing somebody, like I said, I'm very conversational because I like to make people feel at ease. And the more at ease they are and they let their hair down, then they will be more themselves. And then I'll be able to see glimpses and nuances of things that are important to me.
Yeah.
And I had one candidate, and at the end, he asked me, and I was like, good for you. You scored some major points. He said, Steph, what do you look for? Like in a person, in a candidate. And I was like, oh snap, buddy. I said, you're brave. That's very courageous because some people are afraid to ask that question. I
Yeah.
said, that's easy for me. And you've touched on it all in different ways in the show. Care and maturity.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll tell you why. I said, care out of the gates. If you're a caring person, when your feet hit the floor, you're going to set out to do the right thing as best as you can.
Yeah.
And with that care, if you do mess up, you're going to inherently care to try and right the ship the best that you can if you have the opportunity to do that. Universities can't teach you to care or give a shit. Sorry. So number one for me, maturity, why it's number two, Kyle, is you're coachable. You don't have a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
say, hey, I appreciate you. People that I've worked with at a high worth who have a good seasoned level of maturity and they're grounded. They're the first person to come and ask for feedback.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I want to know what you think about this, or
Yeah.
where I could maybe, be better or improve. Or like you said, you'd be on calls and you'd have a debrief. I would always go and meet with CEOs of our accounts and VPs and everything, and get into the car and then drive 3 hours for their next appointment, And I would have one account executive right away. Hey, Steph, so what do you think of that meeting? How did I do? How did that go? And I would just be like, good for you, buddy. Good
Well,
for you.
I think the most important thing about hiring, though, and staff in general, you should have a no jerk policy. I think this is probably the most important piece that I can say. Um, how people treat other people,
Mm,
the communication, how they communicate with one another. If someone is having a hard time rolling out of bed every morning, coming into work because the person they work for is a twit, um, that's a problem. I'll say this is probably when it comes to retention and attraction of staff, um, all of your staff are a billboard.
mm,
Basically, if they're happy, everybody knows. If they're not happy, everybody knows. It's very, very, very important. And I think that when you're looking at that situation, I think that's really, really important that you try to get to the bottom of that as quickly as you possibly can. Um, in our roles, when you're in a leadership role, one of the problems that happens a lot of the times is people tell you what you want to hear,
yep.
or they're on their best behavior when they're communicating and interacting with you, but maybe not with people that are on the floor. I think that's an important piece, um, and it's a hard thing to catch unless you've got a good group of people around you that you trust. They'll let you know when that takes place. But it's that whole thing where you go into a restaurant, and you see someone treating a server in a bad way.
Yeah.
You're like, oh crap, okay, all right, good to know.
Yep.
Listen, you got to watch for those signs. It's because it's like you got to protect what you built.
Oh, well, you know what? Well said. Like spot on, Kyle. Spot on. And that's what I come back to. Does it take an enormous amount of energy? Yes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because you got a million other things on your list. And then you see something or you hear something, right? My problem, and as I hear you download your very impressive, talented leadership brain to me here today, is I'm everything for me, Kyle, is a movie or a song. It's on how I think about things and how I relate. And I saw the movie, and I've said this before in different shows, is Murder on the Midnight Express, Orient Express, I think Midnight Express, and it's got Michelle Pfeiffer, all-star cast. I don't know if you've seen it. And then Kenneth Branagh, who I've been a huge fan of for a long, long time. Hercule Poirier, the investigator, he is talking to a soldier, and he says he fixes his tie because it was just a little off, just a little off. And he says he's kind of plagued with seeing the world as it should be.
Yeah.
And when I heard him say that, I was like, fudge. That's me. That's the cross I carry. It's a plague, but I can't undo it. It's who I am. So talking about the energy it takes so that when you hear something that is not quite right or it's a little off, or you go, there's something there that needs to be explored or addressed. That's the problem. Is most leaders just, I'm too busy and somebody else will take care of it, and that festers. You use that word, it festers, and then eventually, poof, you've got yourself a catastrophe. And then leadership goes, how did we get here? How did this happen? You're
Well,
like, are you kidding me right now?
well, it's an interesting thing because we all work in a situation where there are moments that we can all be justifiably upset about stuff. All of us. There are going to be moments where you're just like, son of a gun. What the hell? I think that piece of I think the biggest thing when you're talking about like see the world the way you want to see it, like you know what I mean, like when you're talking about like paying attention to detail. Because you get to a place, you need multiple people that you trust along for the ride. You need the support to make sure that your messaging is carried forward, that the people that listen, it's important for me to be aware when there are people that are having a problem. Um, our job, oh, let me say this, there's no leader's role. It's 9 to 5. Just it's not going to happen because it sits with you. You think about it, you dream about it. It's like he goes, if you've seen something that isn't right, if you didn't hear something that isn't right, listen, I didn't even dream about it. I've done budgets in my brain. Like it's just like when you're thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
Um, if you're passionate enough to take care of the people that you work with, then this is the most important piece. You do all that you can to make sure um, that they're an environment that they're insulated from, that they're taken care of, that they're looked after, that you're like all of these type of things. So when you say, "Hey, I saw something that wasn't quite right," leaders have no choice but to react to it in some way. You'll deal with it. Yeah, you have no choice. Like it'll bother you until it's done or it's fixed.
Yeah.
So it's like he goes, you just got to do something. Um, it's an interesting piece. Like when you see something that's not quite right, because
Yeah.
it'll bother until you figure it out, or you get other people to help you figure it out.
Yeah, well said, Kyle. And that's why I always keep coming back to people or who are in new leadership roles, or I've had a lot of people over the years reach out to me or listen to me do a talk somewhere and get on my soapbox about things that I'm passionate about, right? And then they will hang around and they'll just be like, wow, man, like you called out some stuff that just went through me like an x-ray, and I gave them permission, that permission to go, you basically illustrated me. They said, and all the things that I'm dealing with and challenging. I go, that's what I say. I said, what? It takes a lot of energy, but Kyle, you bring things into really focused perspective for me and the audience especially the part about leaders need that support too, in order for us to be effective. Because I mean, we are passionate, and that's a lot of energy. Like you say, you look for a lot of energy, but there are days where I'm not quite in the pocket, and and maybe not. It may people may not see it because I'm good at the veneer is pretty thick, but is knowing that I can lean on certain people. I may end up delegating just a little bit more because my cup's kind of overflowing a little bit, and we do need that support. And that's where I faltered the most early on in my time as a newbie leader, going back to not asking for help. I'm going to do it all on my own because I can. And then you're like, oh, no, you can't.
No,
Because look at the results you're getting. Look at some of the stuff that's not getting taken care of that is allowing to fester and, bleed into other things. And then you get poor results.
listen. There's a reason why there's a thank you list at the after every award that's won for anything that we've ever enjoyed when it comes to entertainment, between music and film and television. Anytime anybody wins an award of some kind, they're usually saying thank you to a group of people because they didn't get there on their own. I think the biggest thing for us when you look as a group, you know, um, not everybody has the ability to connect with everyone. There's personality types. I have two partners for a reason. I have an inner circle of 5 to 10 people that I and probably two people I feel like I do business with that are partners as well on the business side. Um, you you know there are going to be moments when you're in a room where somebody else connects better than you do with that person. It's important that you have that network or that group that you can fall in. Like I said, you need to take a moment. You know when you need to shut up. Let somebody, like it's just like, oh, okay, so they're doing really well. Connection's really strong, and you don't have to be proud about it. There doesn't need to be any ego in this. It's one of those things. I'm like, okay, there's a bond there. They've connected. It's a good thing. So you're like, you come off the call and you're like, you'll follow up with that person now moving forward.
And it's really cool to hear that, and it shows you that you spend a lot of time in the leadership world and role, and observing, and going to the lab and retooling stuff like I have, and I call that sharing the stage.
Oh yeah,
Being secure enough to go, I don't. It could be so what? Maybe I'm okay, the VP or whatever. but then you have somebody, titles mean nothing to me, nothing at all, never has. I'm like, it just shows you who eats the biggest shit sandwich when things go sideways. That's all it means. But is to share the stage. And there's been times just like you, I went, boop, and I'm like, I'm not needed here. You know how cool it is for me to just kind of sit back and not all the pressure's off me to bridge the gap or try to develop that connection, or to get that relationship started where it's happening organically between these two people, and I just shut the hell up and go, awesome.
Listen, we're 50 years old. We're in a situation right now when you look at it going, I don't want to say I'm on the twilight of my career, but we're in a place where we have the ability to lift those up around us now more than we've ever had before, get the other people in the spotlight. I think it's really, really important that, you recognize that there's a group that has a level of energy and pursuit of the next things that are coming down the pipe, that you can just go, hey, let me help you get there. Let me just sidestep a little bit. Okay, go. And you support them. Let them feel the weight of the role. Let them understand what's coming down the pipe.
Man, I got so well. It is. You're so right, Kyle. I mean, you have me thinking a lot, and I love that when people get me thinking. And being 50, and you say kind of in the twilight, and I'm reflecting on that comment, because it's true. I'm at a different place in my life. I'm comfortable. I'm the most comfortable I've ever been, from in my career wise, and just and the other thing you said, let them feel the weight. Love it. Love it. Let them feel the weight, and let them dip their toe in the pool. And I would do that. I would give somebody, hey, yeah, you have an appetite for that kind of thing. You're demonstrating, okay, guess what? So next week when I'm gone, or I'll give them more time than that. The week that I'm gone,
Yeah.
you're gonna wear parts of my shoes. And here's
Yeah.
the list, and this is right. And then we'll talk about that experience after. We'll debrief, how did it go, or that. And it's so much fun. It's so much fun to lift people up, like you said. And that's a gift. And when the word gift comes to mind, again, I'm plagued with a mind like a steel trap. And you said something, people come into our lives and then they leave our lives, and we're talking professionally.
Yeah.
And I have had people that I've hired and have been top performers, and would always be like, oh, I hope he or she never leaves, because that's the huge gap for me to fill.
Yes.
And I've had people along the way be surprised and impressed with my reaction when they come and tell me the news that they're moving on.
Yeah.
But all the while, I have real conversations with people and say, hey, whatever your dreams are, your aspirations, if it's not here and it's something else and it's a stepping stone, but you're chasing happy, like Annie Anderson, who was the last guest, point your feet to happy and just walk in that direction.
Yeah.
I support it. So when I would get the 2 weeks notice, my response was never immediately, oh, well, this kind of sucks, Kyle. But hey, yeah, I'm happy for you. It would be, tell me about your next adventure.
Yeah.
I want to hear all about it. This is obviously great news, and I want to hear all about it.
I think the big thing too is like when someone walks out the door, like, okay, like I said, I think I mentioned earlier, it's like, what were the reasons that helped contribute to your decision to leave? Like,
Mhm.
what was it? Like, what are we missing? Okay, is it the quality of the content? Was it something different that you wanted to work with? Was it an opportunity to work with someone else that you feel you can grow more from? Is
Yeah.
it did we fall short in some way? Did we make a promise and didn't follow through on that? I think that's a really important piece. And I think, like I said, knowing what that is, because sometimes you don't get that opportunity to have the conversation of like, hey, can I counter this? Can
Yeah.
I can I work with you to come up with a better solution to have you stay?
Yeah.
Um, you know,
And
you
that
never know.
feedback is critical, Kyle,
It
because it
really is.
allows you to take the temperature of your organization and to see
Yeah.
where you need to fill the gaps. But back to something you said, there's been situations where I'm like, yeah, I can't give you
No. Yeah.
what you're needing and looking for.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's like to move up to another role, I go, that those positions aren't available here. I can't. That's something I can't do for you. But then
Listen,
it would be like, I support you wanting more because you deserve more. So go get more.
and listen, they want to improve their life at home.
Yeah.
They want to get it further ahead. There's that next stage that they're looking for. If a person's trying to get their first home, if they want to be debt free at some point, at some stage, if they want to have the ability to vacation, there's so many different things. And if there's a way of doing that by improving on your financial sort of compensation or your creative or the things that you're checking off to make that decision. I get all of it.
Yeah. Now I want to spend some time. I mean, we could go all night, which is great. That's it's so awesome when it's just you could just talk forever and it's all good and meaningful. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the maybe projects you've worked on. I think audience is probably interested in some of that. And then I think if I'm not mistaken, there was a recent Netflix show cartoon that you guys were kind of part of. I think maybe perhaps.
We've had a few. Yeah, we've
Yeah.
had a few.
So this.
So listen, I think with people with kids, they'll recognize a lot of the shows we've touched. We're working on a show with Nickelodeon called The Loud House, and a spin-off series called Casa Grandes. And then we had Bubble Guppies. We worked, I want to say 5, 6 years ago, we worked with Thomas and Friends. We had a show called Rusty Rivets with Spin Master Toy Company here in Canada. We're doing 2 new shows with them. On Netflix, you'll see a few. You'll see a show called A Tale Dark and Grim. It's a CG show. Another one called Pinky Malinky. Another one called Final Space. We have a show coming out in the new year called We Lost Our Human. And right now, the show I think that's about to release its next season is called a show called for adults called Inside Job on Netflix.
Okay.
We did so there's a little bit for almost everyone. Like there's a lot of stuff that's out there that we've had our hand in. We've been lucky. We worked with some wonderful creators and some wonderful broadcasters with whether it's Warner Brothers or Nickelodeon or Netflix, or you kind of touch a lot of different groups. So we've been pretty lucky.
That's super cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
anything to do with creating, I find is so rewarding, so fulfilling, right? You see because people oftentimes just see the final product, and that's just what they're taking it, and it's an experience. They go, yeah, oh, this is super cool, whatever. But that's why I've always loved seeing the background. Like they'll show you the making of something, a Pixar or something, whatever, and you just go, oh, you like, oh, oh, wow, that's tedious. And then you go,
Yeah.
here's the magic, right? So I have an appreciation for that creative process.
We still have pinch me moments, like when you walk into Warner Brothers onto the set, onto the lot, when you go to DreamWorks, when you go to Netflix, or when you go to any of these Nickelodeon, you walk in and you're just like, son of a gun. I remember the shows that we used to watch when we were kids on these different networks. The films that have been shot on these sets or whatever might be the case. You're just like, this is cool. There is a bit of those pinch me moments. It's been a lot of hard work, but I think that, when you go after something and you start to see it start to fall into place, there are moments where I think it was a couple of years ago, I got to sit across the table from someone who's a well-known director, and we got to sort of swap stories with them. And that was a pinch me moment. I was like, crap. Okay, that was pretty cool. There are very few of those that I have very often. And when you get them, you're just like, well, that's a special one. Like you had a moment with someone you respect, at
And
least creatively,
I'm so glad that you still get them though, right? Because it tells you that you regardless of how long you've been at it and the successes that you have, that you're still be able to let yourself feel that and recognize it. That's super cool. So seeing as we're rounding the corner on our time, Kyle, I always ask the guests on OTC this kind of very final question to kind of bring it all together. And that is, if you were to have to leave the listening and viewing audience with something like a final thought or a kind of a final message that is near and dear to your heart, because remember, it's tools and fuel. You said it earlier too. Inspiration has to come before motivation. You have to, the spark has to go first, and it's fuel in that, which is the motivation to sustain that level of flame. So what would you want to leave?
I'll say 2 things. I think truly you get something out of the work you contribute to it. So like you whatever you put into something, you'll get results from it. So there's that big piece there. I think it's really, really important that that when you're working at the job you're working, and you've heard it a lot recently, probably, is like, take the time in the evenings and on the weekend to do the things you want to do to get to where you want to go. If you've got like a side project that you're trying to do, that side hustle you're trying to eventually turn into your day-to-day at some point, or you're trying to get just to the next level, put the time in. Early in my career, anything that was taking away from that outside of my family were still like, it's the priority. But when it comes to a little game or moments where you're getting out with the guys sometimes, curb that. Focus on the things that you need to do if you're trying to get ahead in life. There's no other way of doing it. You just got to put the time in. Now, the next thing, just be passionate about anything you do. This whole thing, like I said, I'm trying to find my passion. Just be passionate about everything. Like, enjoy the moments, regardless, along the journey. Everything that we do, we learn from. Like, I like this. My favorite thing in life is planning stuff, like working out all the details. Like, about a concept, an idea. If you're entrepreneurial, you
Yep.
see every opportunity that comes across your path every day. Man, if I did that, what would I do? And you start writing it all out. I'm not joking. It's like hilarious. But that's the part that I love, the exercise of like, what would it take? Could I do it better? What would I do different? All those things are really, really important. Um, but I think it's a great exercise no matter what. It's like a project when you were back at school, going through all the details, doing the footwork, doing the research. Um, but I'd say like I think those are the things. It just be focused. Cut out the stuff that isn't getting you to where you need to go. I'm terrible. Listen, when I'm on a routine, I'm amazing. Like when it
Yeah.
comes like you see the results. When you get out of your routine. I say that physically because we've trained together. It's like when it comes to business, sometimes I feel like you only have so much bandwidth every day, and if you've got family things that fill up your free moments, it takes away from some of the things you want to do. But I'll say this, like it's one of the most rewarding things when you see the results of the effort that you make, and they're like, oh, okay, so that fuels you to keep going. I think that's the most important thing. You start to see results. If you put that time into it, there's nothing better than when you know that you've worked towards something and you see results. It's the best thing ever.
Those are great finishing comments and statements, and you get it, Kyle. You get it, and I like being around people who get it. And the reason why you have experienced successes along the way in your life is for a few reasons. One, the mistakes that you were okay to make and learn from, and retool and keep persevering and picking yourself up, right? But the other part is, like most successful people, and I'm going to kind of make a parallel to artists because this is kind of who we're with today. Kyle McDougall is an artist. Is you enjoy the process.
Mm.
You say you get an idea. I'm the same. I'm very entrepreneurial, man. My mind is like, I'm a gearbox. It's always on, and I'm already kind of tinkering away in my head. But you have to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And people want to cut corners on things. They want it to be now and fast, but they're not willing. It's like, hey, I want to learn to play the guitar. It didn't take in 2 lessons. I'm done. This guitar thing, it's terrible. It's like, it's crap. Versus the best guitarists in the world still practice the most basic, simple chords as lessons every single day, because that's the foundation. Like you said, when you're in a routine,
Yeah.
Routine means consistency, right? And then it ties into what you said so perfectly, is you get to enjoy the rewards of the results you're looking for. This has been a real gift, Kyle. It has been a real gift. I can't thank you enough for wanting to do the show with me, but more, more for just who you are, man. Who you are as a person, as a man, as a human being. I like being in kind. Yeah, I like being in
Thank
kind
you.
with
Been a long
people.
time.
It's been a very long time. Who have that genuine moral fabric that you set out to do good, right? You set out to do good, and you're putting people first. So yeah, Kyle, you're a great man, a great person, and this has been a gift of your time, and I think a gift for a lot of people who were along the ride here today. But what I love about these shows that they yeah, we're all 50. Thanks for the reminder. um, Yeah, it is. I just life is about moments, and this has been a moment for me with you. And it's like, yeah, it feels like I just haven't missed a step, even though it's been so long since really we chatted. But
Been over 30 years, brother. This is the thing about it. Like, knowing somebody for as long as we've known each other. And, I think that's an important piece. Listen, I appreciate all that you do. It's impressive. I think for myself, I was lucky to sort of come across good people in life and been fortunate enough to see some of these people still in my life. And I'm really looking forward. So for all those that might not know, like I said, Steph talked about it up front, which was basically we're going to see each other in person in about a week. Um,
exactly a
and
week
I'm
today.
really looking forward to seeing some of the people that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah,
I loved high school. I really did. And, there's an awful lot of really good people that we got to know during that period of time. So it would be fun. And so I know that, um, listen, every time we get to share these kind of things together, buddy, um, like I said, hopefully we get to do this more often.
likewise, 100%. It cuts both ways. Yeah, and on the next week event there, I just could not pass up the opportunity. Right, I was just like, this is the one and only time I'm ever going to do this. This is the perfect time in my life to do it. So I've been jazzed for a few weeks now, and it should be. I just can't wait to walk in there, and then to see the McDougalls and just the shit eating grins on our faces. I'm just ready for this. I'm just ready. I'm just getting ready for this one.
Oh, listen, you'll see Trev, which is great. Watch and
Uh,
listen. He has a wonderful story himself, to see how he's navigated through life. But no, I'm terribly proud of him. Listen, proud of you too, brother. It's really good to
Thanks,
see
buddy.
you. And um, yeah, hope we
See you
get a chance
soon.
to do this, like I said, more often.
Anytime. I'm always open to it.
All right, brother, man.
Thanks, my friend.
See you, buddy.
Cheers. Take
Bye.
care. Bye.